What's up, everybody? Welcome back into another episode of The Lawyer You Know. And we have an interesting video today where we're going to dig in, talk more about jury selection, answer your questions. I don't know if I've done a live during jury selection yet, so I want to answer your questions. But I also want to talk about just how big this is. The world is literally watching this case. It feels very different than round one. I'm going to show you some clips and discuss some stuff that even feels different in my world and what people are sending to me and what I'm seeing on my own. I want to hear it from you guys as well to see if you're seeing the same thing I am. And we're going to look at some rules about preemptory challenges, how this is working, what we're hearing about jurors dropping off and new jurors coming on, and giving an update as to where we're at right now for all what the reports are saying, where this jury is for Karen Read's second trial. So let's, first off, before we even start, Michelle just crushed it. This is one of the Grease shirts. I couldn't remember if I told you guys that story or not, but yes, this is one of the Grease shirts, except this is the most comfortable shirt I think I've ever worn. I feel like I could sleep in it. So this is definitely going to be added to the normal rotation. Thank you for noticing, Michelle. But let's start off the video just talking about where we're at for today. And we're going to start with Christina Rex and see what she has to say here. She says that today, 40 jurors showed up. 37 have heard of the case. That's 90 something percent. She does the percentage. We'll look at it in a second. 21 have formed an opinion. 4 have some bias in favor of a particular party. And 21, more than 50%, have a hardship. So that's 93% today. So it's going up every single day. 75% last trial, 86% day one of jury selection, 89% day two of jury selection, 93% today. So one of the questions I have is just as jury selection continues along, are more people hearing about the case? Are people going to work or going home to their families after they get removed or not picked and they get sent home? Are they going home and telling them, this is what I did, this is where I was, this is what I was doing, I didn't get picked? So more and more people are hearing about it every single day. I think there's a real possibility that that's happening. But we have an update now from Ted Daniel. Let's get to. It's also on the news every day, right? Especially local news. I was on a local Boston radio show this morning, the Hot 96.9 Boston, where we were talking about, guess what? The Karen Read jury selection process for trial number 2. So everybody is talking about this case, yet they're still finding a couple every day. Only 3 today that had never heard about the case. And why is that number shrinking? I've got another idea when it comes to that. Ted Daniel said, the court clerk tells me 8 jurors have been seated for the Karen Read trial, 4 men and 4 women. The selection process continues. Okay. So now we are up to 8. Yesterday, we had 2 after the first day, 7 after the second day. So 2 on day 1, 5 on day 2, and 1 so far today. So you can assume we're going to have a couple more, maybe somewhere in the 10 range by the time we finish today. And they want 16 is what I've heard. I think we had 18 or 19 last trial. So it wouldn't surprise me if they tried to get even more than the 16 that they're planning on. But in order to get to 16 at this pace, it sounds like sometime next week, they're going to have a jury. Now, will Judge Cannoni wait until the following Monday to start opening statements? I don't know. But if I was going to set the odds as a betting man, I would put the over-under at, what is that going to be? April 13th, something like that. The not next Monday, but the following Monday. That would be the over-under. Do you think opening statements start before or after that Monday? And you can let me know in the chat. I don't know any of the races or ethnicities people are asking about, any diversity so far. I don't know. I've heard reports of some diverse potential jurors, but not necessarily which ones actually got picked outside of 4 men and 4 women, their genders being revealed. So I don't know. I don't know how much they're allowing to be revealed, but hopefully there is some diversity on the jury. so that we can have diversity of thought, diversity of opinion, different ways of looking at the case, different life experiences. I think is always great for a jury and in most facets in life. I think it helps the conversation. I love it in the chat. I love talking about this thing from people from Boston, from people from Florida, from people from LA, from New York, wherever it is. I like the difference of opinions. I like the different ways to look at things, which again is another pointer to what we're going to talk about a little bit later in the episode. Then we had this little nugget that I wanted to talk about here. And I kind of like videos like this, not a ton of structure, but definitely some things I want to talk about that I think are really good conversation starters with you guys. And I wanted you to ask questions in the chat about the jury selection process, whatever questions you have. It could be about this case specifically. It could be generally about jury selection. But there was an interesting report about what happened in this case. And let me bring it up here. And one of the things that just kind of piqued my interest to do this video at all, I wasn't planning on doing a video today. And then here we go. Trevor said, start the trial after the Masters. Yeah, that would be ideal, right? Which is exactly what I'm putting the over-under after, right? After Masters Sunday, then we get Karen Reed's trial. So the TV is not going to slow down. All right. So David Bienick said, in the Karen Reed case, we're told one juror has been lost and another added. So still at 7 total. So my numbers from before that we only got 1 today is actually wrong. Sounds like we've gotten 2 today before lunch. But instead of 8 jurors at that time, okay, we're kind of reading these reports out of order, but they lost a juror. And Michael Hugh, not positive how to pronounce your last name, Michael, said, how do they unpick once they pick? And I put a little hint here in my tweet, but there's more to it than that. Most juries in most trials, and I'm saying most meaning more than 50%, a jury is picked in 1 day or less. And when I say or less, a half a day, 3/4 of a day, whatever. Most juries are picked in 1 day. And from my perspective, that creates a different environment than when you have multiple days. And Sleuthy said, how do you lose one? So good. I'm glad you guys have these questions. Worked out perfectly. Apparently Peter on the left. I don't know what that means, but I have a feeling what I'm about to play later, some people may be saying something else, but whatever. That chat's going to chat, right? And we can talk about all sorts of things. I would say I have differing opinions on all sorts of topics as we talk through them. But how do you lose a juror? Well, there's a couple different ways. If you are picking a jury in 1 day, usually you're only losing a juror and replacing them with an alternate. But when you're picking a juror over multiple days, there's a couple different ways you can lose a juror. First, you can go home, and what I put in this tweet, as the defense team or the prosecution team, and if you remember, the prosecutor said they're going to go run them through the system to make sure they don't have a criminal background. Either they forgot or maybe they do and they lied, whatever it may be. But that's not the only research that lawyers do on jurors. Now, there are different ways each jurisdiction does it. Some federal courts don't allow you to do any outside research on a juror. Some courts allow you to do all sorts of research on a juror. There are certain things you can use, certain things you can't use. And regardless of that scenario, most of the time there is at least some outside research, whether it's social media accounts, what's publicly available on these jurors, that lawyers can go and do research and see what they can find out about these jurors. And again, just like the person guessing I was on the left based on something I said, I don't even know what. Or maybe somebody saying, I'm on the right because of somebody we're going to listen to a clip to later, or maybe in the middle or whatever it may be. Lawyers do similar things. You may be dead wrong, but you can go and look at what pages people follow, what they like, what they don't like, what they're into. We had a guy that was a statistician and ran a trivia league. And so we were thinking, he's very detail oriented. He's probably very smart. He gave to a lot of causes. So we were like, okay, he's benevolent. He cares about the world and helping people. It's like all sorts of things you can get from different causes people like, different organizations people follow, whatever it may be. You can learn a lot from that sort of research if it's publicly available about jurors. You can ask some of those questions in jury selection, of course, but it's not as thorough and you don't have as much time as when you go home on your own and you do it in your own research, or you have 9 law clerks doing it, or paralegals doing it, or associate attorneys doing it, or you're doing it yourself at night. So this is the big difference, right? We can send names back sometimes during jury selection, and we can have law clerks, assistants, associates, whatever, doing certain kinds of research, updating it on a sheet. Sometimes you have jury consultants, and they have their own teams that you send back the names, and you're doing it real time. While I'm literally talking to the jury, other people are doing research and updating on sheets, and during breaks, we're looking at them. Where do I need to press in more? Okay, this was interesting. So Kathleen said, Peter, you said you like diversity, and that word is charged at this point. I think that's why someone said it. So I would disagree with that completely. I have friends on both sides that love diversity and love diverse thought and diverse conversations. I don't think it necessarily means you have to force anything. I don't think we should write every rule under the book about it, but I think it's really important. I love it. I personally like to surround myself with it. And I don't think that should be a charged word personally. And I mean, I don't know everybody's political views, but that I don't think that would be exclusive to one side or the other myself. I get like all the DEI stuff and whatever, and the problems with it and what people like about it. That's not at all what I'm talking about. So what was I saying? Okay. So we can do all this research. So when it's a 1-day thing, it's all happening at once. It's fast and furious. It's a situation where I am trying to input as much information as I can while also trying to remember juror names, right? Because Miss Smith doesn't want to be called Miss Jones. So you got to keep this all in your head. And one day when you're doing it and it's going fast and furious and you're learning all these things about jurors. Now, what you can do is like, that juror has not spoken up at all. They haven't answered a single question. So some of the research you get online can help you. And then you bring that into the conversation. And you're like, Miss Jones, what do you follow? What do you like? Do you listen to any podcasts? Whatever it may be. Do you follow true crime? Whatever it may be. And you may know some answers before you even get them a little more warmed up, get them talking so you can learn about them and what they think. And they're more comfortable to talk to you about the case. And of course, building rapport, which is such a big deal. Now, imagine having multiple days to do that. And we see all these lawyers have done over the entirety of this case and how they're litigating it. So from my perspective, they have time to dig in. They have time to learn about these jurors. They have time to test whether these jurors are telling the truth or not. We've seen in the Murdaugh case and in the Ghislaine Maxwell case that maybe certain things came out after trial that some of the jurors either mistakenly put something wrong on a juror questionnaire or purposely did it, or at least arguably purposely did it. So when you're finding out all this information, there's a very roundabout way to get to our question, which is how do you lose a juror? Number one, you could lose a juror because you do research and you find out they were either lying or there was something in their background you didn't know about that now you know about, and you can strike them for cause and you bring it to the judge's attention. Maybe you bring it to the other side's attention. Maybe they agree, right? And you strike them for cause. Or you learn something new about a juror and you go back and you tell the judge, we actually want to use a peremptory challenge. We weren't planning on it. We didn't think we want to, but we still want to. And we'll talk about, I'll just tell you it now. We're going to read the rule in Massachusetts, talk a little bit about peremptory challenges, but most jurisdictions allow you to be able to use as a lawyer a peremptory challenge up until the jury is sworn. So, and this depends on some judges, and some judges in some criminal defense cases need to be very careful about telling a criminal defense attorney they can't use a peremptory challenge. But there's tons of cases where we say, Judge, we accept the panel. Okay. Other side, do you accept the panel? Yes, we accept the panel. Okay. Now let's go to the next two that are going to be alternates, or in this case, 4 that are going to be alternates. That would be jurors 4, 5, and 6. Okay. Do you accept them? No, we're going to strike 4. We're going to strike 5. Okay. Do you accept the alternates? Yes, we accept the alternates. Judge, the other side, do you accept the alternates? Judge, we want to go and backstrike juror number 1, who was on the original panel. Now, some judges can get mad about it. Some of them do. Most of the case law says you're still allowed to do it at that point. Now, if a judge says you can't, there's all these, it depends, but I'm just telling you, generally speaking, much later in the process, you can still backstrike. You can still strike a juror that you have already accepted. John, great question. Is it just 1? That depends on how many peremptory challenges are allowed on your case in your jurisdiction. And we'll talk about what I think it is in Massachusetts. It's different than what we do here, but we'll talk about what the peremptory challenges are. So if you have 5 challenges left and you save them all the way till the end, theoretically, you could strike 5 more jurors. It is your right. And if, per se, we don't get the 4 alternates I expected, right? And there's a juror I really love, but they're 10 spots away, but the other side used 4 challenges on the alternates. So now the juror I loved is only 3 spots away. Well, maybe I strike my 3 least favorite jurors in order to get the juror that I really loved and thought would be awesome for us. There's so much strategy. I love jury selection. It's almost like playing chess. I'm a big game guy. I'm a big strategy guy. I'm way too competitive, even when games don't matter. But But there's all sorts of different ways and different timing and different strategy. It's not necessarily hide the ball, but if the other side's out of challenges and you still have 3 or 4 left, you control this panel. So if you have preference, I like this one better than that one, or my jury consultant says this one's really great. If you can get to that one, let's do it. Well, then you get to decide how you use your challenges. So that's another way we could have lost a juror. Here's another way we could lose a juror. If the juror came in today and said, oh, I forgot. This trial is going to be how long? Well, 5 weeks from now, I have a surgery scheduled and I can't move it. 5 weeks from now, I have a vacation I pre-planned. I'm sorry it slipped my mind yesterday. I'm not going to be able to do it. I went home, told my husband I'm sitting for this case. I didn't talk about any of the facts of the case. My husband said, my best friend is Karen Reed, right? And I didn't know that. Whatever. I'm just making that up. But there's something like that could have come out where a normal human being gets thrown into a position that they don't necessarily know what's going on. They're a little frazzled and they realize something when they got home, that when they come back the next day or they call somebody, they ask, hey, sorry, but I can't be on this jury. And that's how you could lose a juror. So there's lots of different ways you can use a juror. And just because they have 8 doesn't mean tomorrow they'll have 8. You could still lose another one for a number of different reasons, like I mentioned here. Okay. Whoop, just hit the mic. You were on Hot 96.9. I love that show. Yes, I was there this morning. I think I'm going to go on it probably weekly. They said it was fun. It was a quick 5 or 10 minutes. It's a really fun show. Everybody on there is cool and funny. And the way they're watching it, I love. It feels like some, fresh air, especially because some of the hosts are all in on the trial and other ones are, just kind of casually following it. And it's a really fun discussion like that. What do you think about the ratio of men to women on the Lori Daybell jury? I think it's more men than women, like 9-3, something like that. I don't know what to think because she doesn't know how to pick a jury. So I don't think there was a lot of strategy from her point. And I will tell you, if I was going to show up as a prosecutor and you said, give me the first 12, I think I could win most cases. I think I could win that Lori Vallow case with the first 12. So defense attorneys are usually the ones that are more scrutinizing in a jury, trying to figure out, do you already think my client's guilty? Kaylee J, have you seen the Canton PD audit? Can the defense use any of it? Well, Kaylee J, I figured somebody was going to ask me about this today. So I figured it'd be a good time to tease Monday's podcast. And what am I going to do Monday's podcast? We are going to look at the Canton PD audit, and we are going to look at it from the person I trust the most to dig into something like this with me. And I know you guys love hearing his opinion. So my dad will be back. We will be talking Canton PD audit. We have not recorded it yet. So the discussion is still open on what we talk about. We'll also talk a little bit about jury selection, things like that. But this will be the content for Monday's podcast. So make sure you guys are subscribed and make sure the reminder bell is hit so you don't miss that discussion, because a lot of you had questions about it. Mitsame. Peter, outside of the courtroom, do opposing counsels ever call each other on their behavior one-on-one? Stop being a lying liar, a-hole. If you hate each other that much where you think they're a lying liar, a-hole, maybe not. But if you're like, hey, can you just chill on the way you're doing this? Or can you only enter exhibits like this? Sure. Now, they could always say no, and you could talk to the judge about it, but it depends on your relationship. I would say, yes, it can happen. The only thing I know she's charged with, M. Yeah, I mean, if that's the only thing you knew, I think it's definitely possible you could be a juror on the case. More time to overthink and strategize. Didn't the Commonwealth file a motion for parameters of jury impanelment? What does that limit? I haven't seen it. I haven't seen that, so it would be hard for me to answer exactly what that is. But didn't I have this somewhere? Let me put this up on the screen. Because this is an example of the defense is asking for the list of jurors from the clerk, right? And they're asking for the list of jurors. I'm not positive if this is before or after the fact, but in some of our cases, we will get a list of jurors or potential jurors, and you can start doing your research early. You can get it the Friday before, you can get it the week before, a month before, depending on the jurisdiction, how you're doing it, depending on how long your trial is, and you can start doing your research before you even get to the jury panel. So this may be something the defense is doing beforehand to prep, but once you know they're on the jury, here's something that happens to us sometimes. Sometimes we'll get like 500 names for everybody in Pinellas and Pasco County, and we don't know the 30 or 40 that are going to be sitting before us. So sometimes we start doing research on 500 names. It sucks. So much of it is totally unnecessary. Sometimes we have people show up that weren't even on that 500 person list. So sometimes you get a huge list and you have to narrow it down. But if we had the opportunity to go and actually research actual picked jurors, I've never had the opportunity to do that, where they've actually said, here are the actual picked jurors. Because some judges do it a little bit different, where you have people in the box and you move them, or you have a full group and you're cutting a bunch. So you still have the full group. Even if you do come back for a multi-day, you still have 30 people there that you haven't whittled through yet. You don't actually have ones that are sitting jurors. I can only imagine how much digging you would do on those jurors that you know are actually in the case. I look at jury selection so differently ever since you commented once during a video that you start arguing your case as you pick the jury. Is this true for every lawyer? What about a pro se person? So they call it pre-trying the case or conditioning the jury, and there are limits to what you can do and what you can say. But what you want to know is, are there certain things that are going to come up in your case that a juror is going to hate, right? And that could be what your client looks like. That could be what your client has in their past that may come out that may have nothing to do with this case. It may be about how you feel about police. It may be about how you feel about women. It may be about how you feel about people that are unemployed, or how you feel about doctors, or how you feel about whatever. And you put this all in front of the jury to get them talking about things that are going to come out in your case, that if they're biased against or for certain things, it will absolutely make a difference in your case and your client's case. So you need to know. It's not like I go and I say, hey, if this person got hit by a car, had a surgery, how much money would you give them? I'm not going to say that, but I will say, has anybody here been hit by a car as a pedestrian? Has anybody here had back surgery? Okay. And what do you think about this? What do you think about the medical system? Has anybody ever gotten a ticket? Has anybody got arrested? What do you think about the criminal justice system? All sorts of things that you can get out and really learn a lot in jury selection. Peter, do you think more jurors may attempt to appear neutral this time when they are not? How does an attorney figure that out? Sniffer dog for BS. So a lot of times it's asking questions that are not necessarily the direct question that you have, right? And trying to learn and understand, do they call somebody a name that makes you think they listen to a certain show? Do they talk about former troopers in the case, or, whatever it may be? You try to look for certain indications. Do they think all drunk driving means you must have committed the crime? I shouldn't even say drunk driving, like in DUI cases, if anybody thinks that if you have a drink and drive, you should go to jail, that's an obvious indication that regardless of what your client blew, or just, having one drink or whatever, none of that's going to matter. They're going to try to sink your client. So there's all sorts of things that you can do and learn and that's why it's so important to be able to ask a broad series of questions and not just, do you like cops? Do you have any cops in your family? You ever been a victim of a crime? There's so many different ways. There's so much art to jury selection. Why do they sometimes want 12 jurors? In this case, 16. Does it depend on the states or type of cases? Can a juror say they still in? Can a juror say they still in? I don't know what the last part means, but different jurors. So certain cases, like if it's death penalty cases, or certain cases, if it's life imprisonment, you get more jurors. So it's 12 because it's got to be unanimous. So we want to be absolutely sure if we're going to put somebody away for life, or if it is a death penalty type of case. So usually the more serious the case, the more jurors they have. Every jurisdiction does it a little bit differently though. 16 in this case is about alternates. So 12 jurors and 4 alternates. They might get even more. Why would they want more? Kind of sounds like another part of your question. Depending on the length of the trial and the media attention and anything that's going to make it difficult for people to stay on. So if it's a 1-day trial, you might not need any alternates, right? If it's a 1-week trial, maybe you want 2 alternates. If it's a 6-week trial, maybe you want 4. If it's a 6-month trial, you want 10, whatever. You have bigger and bigger jurors to make sure that if you lose jurors and they drop off, you have enough to finish this case and you don't have to dismiss it and do it again. The ratio of I have heard of this case has gone up dramatically today at 93%. Seems sus. Is there a way the first 300 were ranked? I don't know what you mean by is there a way the first 300 were ranked? But yeah, I mentioned that off the top about how this is possible. Maybe people are going home and talking about it more. Maybe all the news stations are just picking it up. And again, maybe this is a good time for it. I have the peremptory challenge stuff. We can read it later. It's a little less exciting than these couple clips I want to put up. So some people sent me these clips, and I've also seen some clips myself. I think this is the one I want to play first. So if you guys mentioned, like early on, one of the reasons I got into podcasting and YouTube and what I like so much about this, and I said I love sports, but why does anybody care what I have to say about sports? And that's why I went into law instead of sports. But the guy that was the very first podcaster I can ever remember listening to was a guy by the name of Bill Simmons. He is a sports podcaster, the BS Report on ESPN. He's a Boston, I think it's the Boston sports guy is what he started at writing for Boston newspapers. He lives in LA now. He's away from Boston, but he is a Boston guy. And I still listen to a lot of his podcasts. And he talks about sports. Like he talks about pop culture too, whatever, movies. but generally I listen to a lot of sports podcasts with him. And he brought up the Karen Reed case and was asking some guests, what do you think about Karen Reed? Oh boy, it's a big one. It's a loud one. It sure is not a good look for Boston, et cetera, et cetera. I just kind of listened to those my own in the car, at the gym, whatever it may be. But another channel that I've talked about before, if you guys know, I love trivia, right? And my favorite trivia YouTube show is The Dozen Trivia. And we've talked about The Dozen Trivia before. Well, it's on the Barstool Network, Barstool Sport. I think it's Barstool Sports. They do sports, pop culture. They do all sorts of stuff, movies and stuff too. And they are run by a guy named Dave Portnoy, who is also a Boston guy. They also have a guy by the name of Minahan, who is like very smart in the trivia stuff. That's how I know him, is just through The Dozen Trivia, who is on a show that he talks with Portnoy. And then they also have a ex-hockey guy named Ryan Whitney on this show. I think he's connected to Boston somehow. I don't know if he played for the Bruins or if he lives in Boston, but we're talking about some rather large influencers and people in and around the world that are mainly sports and pop culture that are literally talking about the Karen Reed case. So let's take a second and let's just listen to these clips, because some of you guys sent me these clips. I heard some of these clips, so I wanted to play them just so we can, you guys are going to cringe, or you're going to hate some of it. You're going to love some of what they have to say. So just listen to this, because these are people that I would say have an ancillary, and Kirk Minahan, I think, had some big part in the Sandra Birchmore case. I think he did like a lot of research on it. I think he was one of the people that helped break the story. Yeah. Thank you. Sweating Bullet said he did a great job on the Sandra Birchmore case. Yeah, he had some involvement in that as well, and he mentions it. And he says, I stay out of the Karen Reed case. You'll listen to it, but let's just listen to this quick. It's like 2 or 3 minutes. But they talked about it on 2 different shows, back-to-back weeks, which to me, couldn't you see a 20-year-old guy in Boston who only cares about sports and follows Barstool, and he's listening to this show and he's like, what? Karen Reed happening in my backyard? Maybe he had never heard of it. And now he has, because these worlds are colliding. And there are people paying attention to this that I don't think were paying attention round one. I don't remember Bill Simmons talking about it round one. I don't remember anybody sending me clips like, Dave Portnoy talking about this case round one. Maybe I'm wrong. But let's take a listen to this, which I think is so interesting.
There's a mole.
Yes,
that's what Dan. So Dan knew about this too.
So this Friday, so even responding, I'm on it, like sending it to Austin and Dave Portnoy. Like he wasn't on it, right?
No, yeah, he wasn't right.
This is nothing. Do we have Bosco? We can bring him on. Okay. Have you guys watched the Karen Reed thing on HBO?
Yeah, I have.
Mm-hmm.
Who's letting her do this? Why is she doing this?
Look, I stay out of Karen Reed pretty much.
Why?
Dave.
So I should mention the bald guy is Kirk Minahan, the one that did stuff with the Sandra Birchmore case. And the middle guy is Dave Portnoy with the Boston hat on, Boston guy, owner of the company. And the guy in the Spit and Chicklets hat is a hockey guy has got a hockey podcast. They do this show where they talk about whatever, all sorts of stuff together. And this is one of the things they talk about. So he said, did you watch the Karen Reed show? So if you're wondering, do those shows matter? Do people watch those? To me, I don't know, right? I don't know everything these guys talk about or everything they say, but they don't strike me as, at least Dave Portnoy and Whitney, the hockey guy, don't strike me as guys that are going to sit there and watch this trial on YouTube, right? And they are getting a lot of their information from mainstream media, maybe documentaries, which can be really good, can be problematic. But I don't think that this is that abnormal. And to me, we're learning what just kind of people that are not necessarily as into true crime, but are either into Boston or know about this case from the documentary, what they think about it and what they're hearing and what they're getting.
Dave, I was going to say, you don't get it not living around here. I think it's you like can't even get involved in it, Kirk. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and the other story I'm doing with Birchmore is like kind of tied. I let the Karen Reed people do their Karen Reed stuff. I
let the Karen Reed people do their Karen Reed stuff. Does anyone not know Barstool? I don't know. It's big, but it's not like ESPN, I don't think. So I just want to explain the background of that. This is not true crime. This is not that world. This is celebrity world, sports and pop culture.
I would not have advised her to do this. This is a very,
I really didn't follow it. I watched the whole thing. I don't think you can convict her, but I think she did it.
All right. So there's the punchline. He said, I didn't really follow it, meaning the trial, but I watched the whole documentary, and I don't think you can convict her, which there might have been some people being like, yeah. And then he said, but I think she did it. I don't think you can convict her, but I think she did it. So there's problems with that. We'll talk about how you get there and what it really means. And to me, how this type of stuff is important research for lawyers to do.
I think that she hit him. I think she hit him by
her, but I think she did it.
I think that she hit him. I think she hit him by maybe by accident.
You think she was drunk and hit him?
Yeah, I mean,
I think a lot of people think that. Yeah.
There's a couple things in it.
So before he gets to the couple reasons why he feels that way, they all seem to agree. Yeah, I get it. She was drunk. She accidentally hit him, but she didn't mean to. And you can't convict her. So what does that make you think? Right? To me, that's bringing in the reasonable doubt argument where you might not agree with them, right? You might not agree with them. People are saying stupid opinion. I get it. I knew how this was going to go. But again, who does this sound kind of like? Some of the jurors, right? Some of the jurors said very similar things to this. At least that's what some of the reports were. So we can't just dismiss these opinions from people that are not as dug in and don't, know everything about the case. So they say, I don't think you can convict her, but I think she did it. So to me, the hammering of reasonable doubt, the bad investigation, the lead investigator, that argument, even to people like this that maybe didn't follow the case and are just getting the highlights from mainstream media or whatever it may be, you would still win as the defense. That would still be a not guilty verdict. And while it's going to be frustrating to a lot of people to be like, oh, you think she did it? There's no evidence. They didn't prove beyond a reasonable doubt. Wait, he's got more to say. So at least they're realizing that there's a difference between saying, I think somebody committed a crime and actually voting guilty.
Where it's like,
I didn't realize it's not on the screen. Let me put it back up here.
Like that's weird. Yeah, I mean,
I think a lot of people think that. Yeah.
There's a couple things in it where it's like, that's weird. Like when she wakes up and she's like, he's dead, isn't he? Like that's your first thought when you thought he was cheating on you. So why wouldn't you just think he cheated as opposed to, and that's one.
The voicemails?
She's crazy. But in the woman who they're like, they thought she texted like, how long to die in the cold? And she's like, well, no, I didn't. I did that in the morning. And the guy's like, yeah, the browser was open, which I believe. But they also are like, she texted how her daughter's basketball team did at like 2 a.m. Like if you just were in a house where someone got murdered, I don't know that you're checking your daughter's like travel team scores.
Probably
before.
not.
And this is exactly what jurors talk about. They didn't argue that. That wasn't necessarily a big point for either side, but jurors go back and think, and they apply it to their own experience. Would I be involved in something that heinous, this conspiracy, this cover-up, and then would I be searching basketball scores? No, I wouldn't. So she probably wouldn't. She seems like a normal person. These are the types of conversations. I would love to talk to any of these, celebrities from Boston about what it's like back home. What are people saying? What do you think about it? How connected are you to it? Why are you connected to it? Is it just because it's Boston? It would be awesome to just pick their brains about why they think about this. I would have so many questions for these three. So to me, they're literally just applying their life experience to what the people involved did and said. And this is not abnormal. We have to remember the bubble that we're in with a lot of our chats and a lot of the people reading every motion, listening to every hearing, watching every day of that trial, going back and watching it a second time is not necessarily how these jurors are going to be. So it's really interesting to me, just like on the radio show this morning, where there were some that were really invested, some that didn't know as much about it. And you can really feel a difference. And don't be surprised if most of the jurors are more like them and less like us. Don't be surprised.
Or you go to bed. I will say that house confuses it with the butt dialing. And I can't imagine a police chief not walking out to his front lawn when there's like cops out there and there's a shit show. He just never goes outside.
But
So
I think the argument.
So again, the butt dialing he mentions, it's like there are problems. There are things that just don't add up. How's a cop not going to go see what's, going out and seeing what's happening on his front yard? Those don't make sense.
They were just so crippled. It was
They were
like
hammered,
5 in the
though.
morning.
Yeah.
They're still asleep.
yeah.
I just don't think 12 people ever all say that she did it. Like
Yeah, I
don't know.
no jury is ever. It might be a hung jury again.
I agree.
And he thinks no 12 people are ever going to say that she did it. I find that so incredibly interesting. Thank you, Netwoman, for gifting memberships, and everybody else. I see a bunch of people gifting memberships. That's always awesome. But even though they think she did it, they just can't imagine 12 people getting together and saying she did it.
But there's no way 12 people will get together.
And by the way, I have enough like doubts in my mind. If I was on that jury, I'm not 100% sure. I'd say, because I feel like you really need to be 100% sure.
Well, definitely, if you're going to convict her for this.
So I think she did it, but watching that, I wasn't like 100% sure. The other people, no one can explain the butt dialing to me back and forth. Well, my God.
All right. So then they go on to the next segment, but he says, even after all that, even saying, I think she did it, I could never be 100% sure. Is it without beyond a reasonable doubt 100%? Not quite, but I like to say it's as close to 100% as you can possibly get. And he's saying I had enough doubts, as weird as it was, and I don't think X, Y, and Z happened. Basically what he's saying is I don't believe the conspiracy necessarily. It doesn't make sense to me that people would do that. But I could never vote guilty because I have way too many doubts in my mind. Now, he's just basing it off of the documentary, but isn't that interesting? I knew there was going to be a lot of people that completely disagree with the beginning of their statement, but hopefully the world is becoming more in tune with understanding beyond a reasonable doubt, understanding you got to be sure if you're going to convict somebody for something like this, you've got to be sure. It can't just be like, yeah, I feel like she probably did it. Well, I feel likes and maybes are just not enough in the criminal justice system. I found that to be so fascinating. And then this other clip is literally just 1 minute, but it was just crazy to me that this is such a big topic for a show like this. That's like a sports show that in back-to-back weeks, they spend time talking about the Karen Reed case and trial number 2. So let's hear what they had to say this week.
People, but I don't like being around my best friend.
I think I have it on the way I listen to it. Here we go.
For 7.5 hours. Never mind.
Oh, that's brutal.
Okay, so I do need to set this one up because I had literally no clue what they were talking about. I had to back it up and I'm like, what are they talking about? So there's this hockey event that I guess they have something to do with, again, sports show. The guy with the Oilers hat has a hockey podcast. They do some event where they invite a bunch of hockey guys and they watch hockey games together. And they're at this event. And listen to what happens.
No.
Brutal.
And then there was a kid and people, because Nashville, like, that's a party town and people are buckled. And this one kid is just, he's a witness in the Karen Reed case.
Yes.
So there is a kid whom they call a witness in the Karen Reed case. They don't say his name. So I don't want to necessarily jump to conclusions on who I think this might be. You guys can guess in the chat. But a kid that is a witness in the Karen Reed case comes up to them at this hockey sporting event in Nashville, not Boston, in Nashville, to talk to them. And basically it sounds like brag that he is a witness in the Karen Reed case. That's how much this case is being talked about. Do you understand how wild that is? Like, do you guys understand how wild that is? We're at a hockey event. Everybody's drinking. Everybody's watching hockey and screaming and cheering. And some kid walks up to Portnoy and the boys and says, I'm a witness in the Karen Reed case. That's crazy to me. So I don't know which one it is, but it gets better.
You see, and I'm like, what the fuck? I go, what? Who called you? The prosecution or defense? He goes, both.
There's a big video of him actually, like in Turtle Boy, getting into it.
So there's a big video of Turtle Boy and him getting into it. He's giving clues, right? The prosecution and the defense. I don't know who it is. I'm not even going to try to guess who it is. But they're giving a lot of clues. And he's coming up and he's like, yeah, I'm calling from both sides. I didn't say Colin. I said, I'm calling, being I'm called from both sides. I got into it with the video of Turtle Boy. I don't know if Portnoy knew that or if the kid told him. But isn't that something?
Like,
Oh yeah.
I told him I didn't even know anything. I told him to give him a brick watch. He's like, I'll wear a brick watch on trial. It's like, all right, fine.
Yeah, he said to me, he's like, hey, he gave me 2 email addresses to send, but he's not going to send me a brick watch. I know. And I go, he'll send you one.
Oh, he'll send it.
Yeah,
he's
I'll
got
send a
5
brick
million
watch.
of them in
Yeah, I'll
stock.
send a brick watch. The other thing, I knew it was gonna be a long day. The second,
So then he just goes back into what the day was like. So then Brick Watch, I had to look this up, is a company owned by Dave Portnoy. And so I guess wearing the watch at trial is almost a bit like a bingo. Somebody just said I didn't have I always read the chat as I'm talking, and sometimes it throws me off. Somebody said I did not have Portnoy saying Turtle Boy on my bingo card. Yeah, me neither. But basically, somebody potentially could get a brand deal during a trial. Have we seen that yet? Have we seen somebody going on one of these live stream trials with a brand deal, wearing a shirt or a watch, and he's going to wear a brick watch from Portnoy to promote his watch brand while he's being called in a trial? Ain't that something for product placement? I mean, my mind was blown. Say whatever you guys want about any of the guys on the screen. You love them, you hate them. That wasn't the point of the video. The point of the video was the world is watching. People are watching. Everybody is talking about Karen Read's case. And sometimes sometimes I think it's just us, right? I know there's a lot of us, right? There's 10,000 plus of us in here right now in the middle of jury selection talking about this case because we're a little wild. But we like this stuff. We watch this stuff. We consume this stuff. But it's not just us. And to me, that was a wild realization. Worlds colliding with sports. The Bill Simmons podcast, the dozen trivia people, because Minahan's like MVP of the trivia, all coming together. I mean, it's not just them, right? You see it on E! News. You'll see it on, all sorts of different podcasts, news stations, platforms, local radio shows, local news, HBO, wherever the documentary was played. Everybody is watching, which is a pertinent conversation during jury selection. And I think that there are definitely people that could have never heard about this case over the last however many years it's going on. And just in the last couple weeks, with the hundreds of people being called for jury selection, with radio shows, sports shows, pop culture shows talking about this case that are maybe hearing about it for the first time. MM said, would you be more skeptical of potential jurors who say they haven't heard of the Karen Read case? I think it would depend, right? I mean, like I said, if it's a high school senior and they got other stuff to do, I wouldn't be that surprised, even if they're a college student. If it's a 75-year-old guy who is still working as a dentist, no, that wouldn't surprise me if he's never heard of the Karen Read case, right? Or maybe if you say a certain generation watches more news, I don't know. I mean, yes, I would be skeptical, but I think there were some people that could convince me they didn't hear about it, because I have been surprised in the past where there are some high-profile cases that we've individually voir dire jurors on that they had never heard of. Not quite to this level. Can you ask your dad about the Cy Ray affidavit? We'll see. I mean, there's a lot of background I'd have to give him on that because he hasn't been following that case. Netwoman, how are they able to charge Karen Read with M when the medical examiner lists the manner of death as undetermined? So the medical examiner is not a juror. They don't determine what crimes have been committed, if any. So that's not their job. So that's why it's up to the prosecutors and law enforcement to do that work. Christy Turner, I am stuck at home recovering from a total knee replacement. I love digging into all these juicy trials right now. Love your point of view, Peter. Yeah, I got to say, it sucks. And I wish you the best, fastest, and easiest, smoothest, quickest, best recovery you could ever have. But it sure is not the worst time to be sitting on your couch, right? I mean, what's coming up over the next couple weeks is potentially unprecedented. As Kelsey has just sent in the text, do you think this is reaching further than Johnny Depp v. Amber Heard? I feel like my answer is not yet, but I think it could get there. And the wild thing is there's no celebrity here. And there were 2 celebrities there. But that one had some really serious international interest, Depp v. Heard. So if I had to guess, probably more eyes on that. But I will also say that something working in the Karen Read trial's favor is we are more used to live streaming trials, more used to having cameras in the courtroom, better equipped, and more people know this exists. When it was Johnny Depp, people didn't even know they could watch. Did you hear about LD telling the jury they were there to protect her? Did you hear about LD telling the jury they were here to protect her? I don't know who LD is. If that's obvious, that's my bad. I did not hear about this. Sassy Bartender, what are your thoughts on the First Amendment lawyer Mark Rendoza suing King Kong Kanoni, Kim Jong? I don't know why I read that as King Kong Kanoni. It just kind of rolled off the tongue. On the buffer zone in federal court. We'll see how it plays out. I haven't had a chance to read the complaint. I know a couple of you guys have sent it to me. I haven't had a chance to dig into that. Minahan and Turtle Boy have known each other for more than a decade. I did not know that. Now, King Pine Worldwide, what's up? Do I have my wedge somewhere? I can't find it. Next time you ask a question, I'm going to have my awesome wedge here that I've been showing off around the office. That's amazing to me. That's crazy. That feels like worlds colliding, but Boston's like a small town, right? Azam, can the jurors say they still want in the jury? Yeah, of course. They can try to get on a jury all they want. I just hope they're honest so that the lawyers can make the right decision. Strains credulity. If it's a hung jury the second time, will they go again? It's a question I can't answer. I mean, I would think that would make you push even more to not do this again. You cannot prove this case beyond a reasonable doubt, but it's going to be up to the prosecutors. D, as a self-proclaimed master of deep diving of people's public info, is there such a thing as someone who can dig up juror info quickly during selection? D, absolutely, with 100% certainty there is. For law firms, for jury consultants, there's some huge jury consulting companies around the country that use people like you and need people like you, and it can be done fully remotely because they share spreadsheets that are all in the cloud. Absolutely. Ethically, of course, and legally. Michelle L., I also think that people tend to dismiss info that doesn't align with what they believe as a distraction rather than assign it to reasonable doubt. I agree, Michelle, on both sides. On the radio show, it's one of the questions they asked me is, do you think a lot of people are going to be changing their mind? And I think most of the way right now, anything you see either plays into your story or it's a distractor or it's just something that I don't believe or somebody's lying. I think there's going to be a lot of that sentiment. Petition for writ of cert just filed in the U.S. Supreme Court. Okay. Kathleen D'Angelo, what would you be doing legally if Karen were your daughter? Everything they're doing. I mean, hire the best lawyers I can. Dig into the jurors as much as I can. Try to get the best jury for her. That's what I would be doing. Mary Claire, so glad to finally make a live. I'm from Boston and my work team is from the UK. Some of my team asked me if I was following the Karen Reed trial. Oh yeah, maybe there's more international spice to this than I thought. Monica, doesn't matter if all the world is watching because biased Bev will still make the law. Well, she doesn't make the law. She interprets some of it and is the gatekeeper. But I think the world watching is a good thing. I think it's a good thing. I just hope none of the jurors are watching. You're so energetic today, Peter. Please keep me awake. This was just a really interesting video to do for me because I was shocked when people were sending me these clips of all these different people talking about it. If you see celebrities talking about it, by the way, I don't really care who they are. I don't care if they're, if it's Joe Biden and Donald Trump. If they're talking about this case, I would be so interested in what people have to say, what they're saying publicly, what they're admitting to, what they believe at this point, regardless if they fully thought it through. To me, I love it. I love gaining more information, learning more things, putting it into the computer system to see what gets spit out. To me, it is so interesting. Thank you, Francis and Carrie, for gifting memberships. Hi, Peter. The case is wilder than you think. I am Uruguayan and glued to this case as the first trial. So, Alejandra, that is correct. That's wild. I can't imagine that. I get it. I understand why. I definitely understand why. And now Sarah Ann is telling me she's watching from Ireland. Maybe this is more international than we thought. And I actually think like the whole industry is more international because of the Johnny Depp case and maybe some of the other ones because of the UK trial that happened before. Do you think anyone will flip? I'm sure there will be someone that will flip from one side to the other, but I don't think very many people will, if anyone does at all. Corey, good day. In the real world, how hard is it to manipulate your way onto the jury with an agenda? Thank you, Peter. I don't think it's that hard, unfortunately. If you don't have anything publicly facing, like, a criminal record, or you're very obvious on social media and you just don't answer any questions or answer yes or no, or don't play or make the lawyers feel like jerks if they really have to pry the information out of you. Some lawyers will refuse to pry. They don't want you to hate them. Some lawyers love prying. And there's actually some strategies with jury selection is you want the jury to hate you. You want all of them to hate you and to tell you why they hate you so that you can pick the ones specifically that maybe don't hate you as much or still don't hate you, even though you've tried to make them hate you. cooking a big pot of red beans and rice. Yum. Because once this trial starts, I'm not cooking. Hi, Peter and Laura, fam, ready for the tooth and nothing but the tooth. Yeah, you got the Masters, you got this trial. It's a great time coming up. Is this real here? I will say it's wild to me that the Masters and this trial are mentioned in the same breath because someone's life is literally on the line. Someone died. But when the world starts watching, it starts to become a spectacle. And we have to remember, and we got to do the best we can to remind ourselves what this is, what the stakes are, how important justice is, how important transparency is, how important the truth is, and make sure that we keep our eye on the ball, right? We keep our eye on the ball. And no matter how wild or funny or something a meme may be, if something happens in this trial that shouldn't, we've got to focus on that and discuss why, how, and what needs to be done. How many times can a case be tried with a hung jury? Is there a limit? There's not necessarily a limit, but sometimes judges will dismiss cases eventually for there being too many issues or them just saying that there's not enough here clearly. Sometimes higher prosecutors like the sitting DA will come and sit and be like, we're done with this case. We're dismissing it. So there are some things that happen. Sometimes you can argue speedy trial. I've seen people argue speedy trial arguments where, if you really get to a third, fourth, fifth trial, that it's just been hanging around too long. They're not doing their job. Fundamental fairness, interest of justice arguments can come. Definitely. Guatemalan fan watching over here. Karen G. The G is for Guatemala. Oh, LD is Lori Daybell. My bad. She told the jury they were there to protect her. Okay. So there's a lot of leeway with a pro se defendant that a criminal defense attorney would not get. So it doesn't surprise me that she said some stuff we probably wouldn't ever hear a defense attorney saying. Brian B. As someone who was a professional skip tracer for years, we can find out about anyone in 15 minutes. Thanks, LexisNexis. Yes, we have LexisNexis as well. So yeah, there's all sorts of programs and ways you can do this. Thank you so much, Netwoman, for gifting another 20 memberships. Let me just mention about preemptory challenges. I'm trying to pull up the rule now. I think in Massachusetts, you get one per juror. So 12 on a 12-person jury. And then if you go to 16 jurors, I think you get 16 preemptory challenges. I believe that's the way I read it. I do have to run those, so I don't have enough time to read through the whole rule again with you. I planned on doing that, but too many great comments. Don't even know what the law is in my own country. I mean, that's funny to me, but also it's like, that's really important about what I'm trying to do here in America so people understand the law here, even you. Ask George about the DOJ seeking death for Luigi. Yeah, we'll have to do another Luigi update soon, but it feels like all energy is in Karen Reed right now. Peter, how do you think the jury will respond to Brennan's style? I really don't know. Let's wait and see how he actually presents during trial. Because how he was during the hearings, I think there will be some things that will be a turnoff to a jury, but let's see how he actually presents in front of them. Maybe he'll be different. Maybe he'll be the same. There are certain things, though, I think, like especially if he has to be corrected and he has to admit misstatements on the record, that will be a problem, obviously. So we'll have to see. All right. Dude, this was awesome. I didn't know people were going to show up for this. It was just kind of random, kind of my thoughts, things that surprised me. Thank you guys so much for coming, making it interesting, making it fun to talk about this case. It truly is wild. Please subscribe to the channel if you guys haven't already, and make sure you hit that like button. Hit the like for the Grease shirt. We got a couple more maybe coming before we go on our trip, but you guys are the best. We're going to be hanging out a lot lately, so get used to this mug. Till next time, I'm out of here. Thanks for watching another episode of The Lawyer You Know. If you enjoyed the episode, please hit the thumbs up and share with your friends who may be interested here on YouTube. And don't forget to subscribe. You can also follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok. And don't forget to check out the Lawyer You Know podcast with new seasons dropping every quarter. If you have a case you want to talk to us about, if it's a personal injury case, wrongful death, catastrophic injury, car accident, or slip and fall case, please email us at lawyeryouknow@gmail.com. And of course, all these links I just mentioned are included in the description below on this episode and every episode. So until next time, this is Peter Tragos, The Lawyer You Know.